Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Romero, your host, and welcome to the 2021 virtual GSHA, Virtual Business Meeting and Conference. We hope you enjoy our presentations over the next 2 days. Please be sure that you're muted and video is off. Questions will be taken at the end of the presentation using the chat box only. Although we do change our minds about that depending. It is my pleasure and honor to present Henrietta Martinez Christmas. Henrietta's presentation will be about La Familia Martinez. Thank you, Hen. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's always good to share information about the Martinez family. Basically, what I'm going to just cover today is more of an outline of a surname study that I've done for the Martin Serrano family. And kind of like most people with a surname, and I happen to be a Martinez, I think there's just a lot of curiosity from people in terms of, how long has the name been around? Is there a town named after us? Anything like that that can just kind of pique your interest a little bit. And so with the Martinez's, because it's one of the largest families in New Mexico, it gets a little crazy. So this is called, why do a surname study? And I would say, why not? Why not do one? My husband's surname is Christmas, and that always, conjures up all kinds of interesting topics with people about my kids' names and how do you spell Christmas and things like that. Well, Martin Serrano is not an unusual name. In fact, it's a very common name. Again, how many lines does this family have? Well, there's a lot of Martinez's. I wouldn't even begin to know how to answer that. I do, as we go through, we'll look at a few of the connecting families. And then again, the ones that connect or don't connect. And in my case with the Martinez's, I like to look at historical occurrences, things like Inquisition documents, if they're in the military, what they're actually doing as part of their lives while they're alive, instead of just looking at sacramental records. And then again, the Martinez's are also came to New Mexico as Martin Serrano. Then they used Martin for a long time, and then it switched over to Martinez. And a lot of the stuff about the name, we just really don't know. Again, is there a town name, a bigger area? We don't have a county in New Mexico called Martinez County. We should, but we don't. And again, if you're going to do a surname study or just kind of work on one line for a long time, like my friend Karen Stein Daniels here did her Massey book, it took her many, many, many years. And it's a great example of how to just focus on one family at a time instead of jumping all over and going down rabbit holes. That's how I do research. There is a group out there called the onename.org. It's a one name study out of England. They have a lot of surnames on here that you can look to see if there is something on your surname. And again, if you have an unusual name, I would go maybe down this path, but with the name Martinez, a one name study guild is probably not that great of an idea. Other examples, we have a Gurley surname study in New Mexico. Angela Lewis starts or heads this up. She's a Gurley, and all she does is work on Gurleys. Don't ask her about her Bacas or any other Gallegos family or whatever. All she focuses on are Gallegos. And so in the ill-fated La Salle expedition, Jacques Gurley, who eventually came to New Mexico, was captured, sent to Mexico City in chains, then to Spain, came back to Mexico City, and eventually made its way back into New Mexico and married Elena Gallegos. The name was Grole, Grole. Since then, it's Gurule. And of course, what she does is a one name study, but all she does all the time is focus on Gurles. And it also includes a website, a Facebook page, and she has a current DNA study going on. And so I'm going to talk about each of those when it comes to the Martinez family. But she's a good example if you want to put together your own one name study type of thing, some rules to follow. So collecting data, and I would say just for all genealogists in general, this is an area where you need to spend just some time up front. With the Martinez family, there's a lot of Antonios. People get confused. They think the Antonio from Taos is the same guy from Santa Cruz or the same guy from Santa Fe. You need to just collect more data to make sure that you're actually working on the right family. You know, plan what you're researching, what you want to capture, and then cite your sources. And I've been doing this a long time, and I still find records and folders that I have that I still don't know where I got the data from. So over time, I've eventually let go and just gotten rid of those because they are really of no value to me. Other things you can do is how you're going to compile the data, places, occupations, census materials, if you're going to just do it by name only. The Chimayo Martinez family is big. They are a huge family. You almost have to give each one a number or some type to clearly identify who is who. The interesting part about the Martin Serrano family, though, is there's not a lot of variant spellings. You know, we've seen like Chavez. I mean, it's all over the place, but Martin is usually Martin Serrano. It's also Martin is a first name and it's also a surname. So you have to kind of be careful again when you're looking at these records to really identify the person or the family group that you're actually working with. And as part of all genealogy is what do we do with all of this? You know, who are we trying to solve our problem with? Is it the whole line, my cousin's line? If we're going to publish it, or we're going to post it online? How are you going to handle all this data? Because once your family finds out that you're the, Martinez guru in your family, you're going to start getting a lot of questions, and you need to figure out how you're going to answer them. And I can tell you that a lot of bad feelings or vibes come from living people when you don't add them to your materials, or you do publish their material and it's private. So you have to kind of ask yourself as a, ethical question, what am I really trying to do here? And is it just to capture names, or am I really trying to identify everybody in my family? Because what we're doing today is leaving a legacy for our children and their children and so on and so forth. So I would suggest that you figure out how you're going to compile, and I call it publishing, but I think of that would even be like a 3-ring binder if you just have all that material in one spot. So I like to look at place names, spelling variants here. In New Mexico, we don't have anything fancy about Martin. The first guy that came was Hernan Martin Serrano, who came with Oñate in 1598. We know he was from Zacatecas, and that's it. That is where the line ends. There's a lot of not good genealogy out there that shows him coming from conquistadors and going back to Spain, and we've yet to identify anything more than what we've already known for probably the last 40 years with Fran Jalico Chavez's first Origins of New Mexico family book. So, we have to learn that sometimes you're just going to have to be happy where you stop and then go work on another line for a while. But this family came to New Mexico, Martin Serrano, for about 200 years. They were Martin and Martin Serrano. And then, like my family, about 1835, 30 in that time period, switched over to Martinez. I still don't know why. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just progression that happened within, I think, all of the families that took the surname Martinez. For New Mexico, we always look at place names of New Mexico. It's kind of interesting because Padre Martinez in Taos has a street named after him, Padre Martinez Lane. The house he lived in is on this street, and it's across the street from Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. So again, I think every town in New Mexico has a Martinez Lane, but I don't know for which Martinez they're talking about. So Padre Martinez, we know that's his street, but if you go to Corrales, New Mexico, and there's Martinez Lane, I don't know who they named that street after. So you might want to do a little bit of that type of research. Again, there's many Martinez street circles, so on and so forth. There's also in Albuquerque, a Martinez town. This is near downtown. I put here on the slide, we have Barrios, but as a whole, I don't know that many Martinez's actually lived in Martinez town. I mean, we just know that that's an area within Albuquerque that has that. So again, identifying and using your maps, kind of where these people lived. And because New Mexico is very fluid in some respects with migration and immigration, yes, the people from Albuquerque that are Martinez's could be related to the people in Chimayo. It's just a matter of really understanding that, yes, people went back and forth. So, don't get caught up that you always have to just research only in Santa Cruz because that's where all your Martinez's came from. That's not necessarily true. They might have found a gal to marry in Albuquerque and they're down in Albuquerque for a while. And so we began with Hernan Martin Serrano. This is, says at the top there, Sargento. This is his muster roll when he comes to New Mexico with Juan de Oñate, and it's Hernan Martin Serrano, hijo de Hernan Martin Serrano. Wow, how original. And so, it says he comes with his wife and family, and that's it. It doesn't really identify much more than that, which is very unfortunate for us because I would love to know his mother's name. And I also would like to know what his wife's name was in this record. And when it says Familia, I would also like to know how many Martinez's came with him. And so there's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to the early Hernan, the first one that came, because this is where we're really at with him. There's just not a lot. And so in 2020, I published a book with my cousin, Danny Martinez, and it's just a compendium of a whole bunch of Martinez information because I was getting tired of collecting all of this data and not knowing what to do with it anymore. And I thought the best thing to do is just put it all in a book and let other people do research. They might have more stuff than I do. They might correct my work. Just wanted to get rid of some of these papers I had. I was just, piles get huge over time. And so we got together and organized it. He helped me edit the book and kind of just went through. And to be honest with you, we got kind of tired of Martinez's. I mean, after a while, you just kind of tell yourself, oh my gosh, there's so many of these people. And so the trunk line of the Martin Serrano line, I believe, really starts with Hernan Martin Serrano. But there's genealogy, paper trails, and then there's biology, which is the DNA. And so sometimes with our Martin Serranos or Martinez's, we can only go back so far. And that's when a DNA test may actually come in handy to help you sort through that to see who your connections are or aren't. I'm a big organizing, sorting, color coding person, so I like to do a lot of that. But a common surname with the Martinez's is definitely Antonio. So, again, don't get too caught up with the wrong one. And again, if you get stuck, I would just suggest that you do a DNA test to see if you actually do connect to the trunk line. And if you don't, don't get all upset or anything. It's just, there's things that happen in time and we just don't know some of the answers sometimes. And so, kind of moving forward, where to start in New Mexico with your Martinez family. Like everyone else, I think I'm on my second book of origins already. It's what I call the Bible. If you don't have Origins of New Mexico Families, you need to get a copy. It is still widely used. It's valuable resources. We'll talk about a little bit of that in a minute. Another book is Spanish Recolonization. Although there's no chapter on Martinez's, they're intertwined with all the families in there. The Vargas journals, interesting material, census material, muster material. Things like the Biblioteca Nacional or BNM in Mexico has quite a bit of stuff. Jose Antonio Escobar's Beyond Origin site. And then I just put here eBay or books with the name. So if you see a compiled genealogy book that's got Martinez on the cover, I would suggest, maybe buy it if that's what you're looking for. If you're a Baca descendant and there's a family compendium of Bacas, you never know what someone else's research might prove out to be for your research. And I'm not really going to talk about online sources here, except Beyond Origin site, because I just have my luck with online material is not very good. And so I just caution people to be very careful with what they find online. So going back to origins, this is really compiled in a way that, like here, Hernan Martin Serrano II gave his age as 25 in 1632. A lot of this material hasn't really changed. I mean, this is just what we still know about the Martinez family. And a lot of people come from Luis Martin Serrano and Catalina Salazar. I mean, that was a huge, huge family. It just kind of goes on forever. And so again, when you're looking at this, back to the progenitor line, take a look at some of the source material that Fray Angelico Chavez used. And this is right here, this information down at the bottom. And if you're going to do a study or try to find some documents that refer to your ancestor, I would really suggest that you try to recreate these source materials to see what Chavez was looking at and what you're looking at, and then come up with hopefully the same conclusion. A lot of these, the AGN Mexico Inquisition, the Tierras book I thought I saw in here. Yes, here it is, Tierras, and the Provincia Internas. These are all in books at UNM, at Zimmerman Library, at the Center for Southwest Research. And they're not hard to find. They're cataloged fairly easily. And so you can get to the documents to actually take a look at them. The Spanish Recolonization of New Mexico is another compiled genealogy book. There is no chapter on Martinez's. Now they do have Martinez de Cervantes Chirinos and the Martinez de Gamboa family, but those are not the trunk line Martinez family. Again, I would just, this book for my own book is fallen apart. So, start mining for the data, look for places, check against the source material. And again, for geographic areas, because I've spent quite a bit of time researching Martinez's in Santa Fe and Chimayo. Those are my two big predominant areas that I've actually done research. And so, when you look at a compiled book like this, you go, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be able to go to a chapter and find all of the Bacas. Well, you don't see the Baca here as a chapter, but Bacas intermarried into these families. So just because they're not in the table of contents doesn't mean that they don't exist in a book such as this. These are the families that came in 1692 from Mexico City. And so again, my own personal study is I would love to do a Martinez study of all the ones that went to San Miguel County in New Mexico, because that's where my family ended up, just to give me a feel for, are they all related? Did they all come at the same time, and that type of thing. So here's the Spanish Recolonization Index you see here for Martin. There's tons of Martinez's: Martin Chacon, Martin Gonzalez, Martin Sanhil, which are not Martinez's, and the Martin Serrano y Trujillo, Martin de Gamboa, so they keep going. And so you have to kind of go through these indexes and really keep looking for some of your people when it comes to this type of a book, or just go line by line, which is what I ended up doing. And it is a daunting task, because if you're focusing just on one surname, you want to compile as much information as you can as you go through the data. This is from the Journals of the Don Diego de Vargas series. This Martin and Martin Serranos take up at least a page and a half, almost 2 pages, I think, of all of the material that's covered in those books. I think there's 6 of them. And so the indexes can be helpful. This book would cover the period 1692 to 1712. So it's a very condensed period of time. It is the post-Pueblo Revolt era, but still part of Spanish colonial New Mexico. And again, there's all kinds of stuff. They did a great job indexing this. So some of them will have biographical notes, statements of, there's a black slave up here, wife of, and so they've kind of helped you a little bit here. But again, if you're looking for a specific person, this might be a great book, especially if it's for that 1692 to 1712 time period. And there's too many Martinez's in these books to actually go each one specifically. Another thing I really like to do is look at land records. This is out of the book that I did on the Martinez's. Land, Mateo Martin, married to Antonia Mays. Her lands are from inheritance. And then we have Tomasa Martin Gonzalez, married to Bernardino Sena. There's a dowry with a bunch of documents in it. Maps, most of the land grants have maps. So you can include some of this stuff where the Martinez family lived. And the petroglyph is actually above La Soledad. And I always like to think that the Margarita Martin's Roybal children might have gone up and done this Spanish lion that they probably took off of a flag, demonstrating that the Spanish people were actually doing, were in that area at that time. Could have been her father or even Domingo Martin, but again, that's an area where a lot of Martinez's lived. And you just have to kind of do one branch at a time. Cristobal Martin and Antonio Moraga from Chimayo. She was the powerhouse of the family. By the time they moved back in 1692, he was blind. She basically had been a landowner. Her family had been landowners in the Chimayo Santa Cruz area, and she was a force to be reckoned with. So she made sure that all her kids ended up with inheritance from that area. So one other thing I like to do when I start working on this, and I use a genealogy program quite a bit, but I talk about like Hernan Martin Serrano in 1597, he's on a muster roll with Oñate. And then I put married before 1598 because we really don't know anything about the family. Even though he says the family came, we don't know how old the kids are. We can't really even surmise. I mean, he might have been married in 1596 for all we know. His wife, we don't really know anything about Juana Rodriguez after 1597. So we don't know if she died between then and 1606. By 1598, he's in New Mexico. There's a son born. Doña Inez comes into play, his second wife, and and another child. So this is not Hernan with 14 or 15 kids. A very small family group actually for them, but I really believe that doing a timeline is very specific, especially with these large families that just don't play out very well. This is from my database. Again, he was born in Zacatecas, or so he tells us. I've been through all the Ayuntamiento records for Zacatecas. There's no Martin Serranos in there. And so I really think him and his father were probably from another area in Mexico and ended up in Zacatecas when the silver mining became a big deal. And because it's a genealogy program, I just have all the kids under one wife because it's too hard to flip back. And under the suffix, I put 1598 because then I know when I'm going through my index of my database, I know he's the one that I want to capture from my collected data. And then I can start using all of this information, testimonies, where he came from and his children to just kind of start developing my compiled genealogies of the Martinez family. So looking at the wives, this is Margarita Martin. She died in 1743 in San Juan. She was married twice. She was first married to Juan Padilla, and then she married secondly Bernardo Roybal. And what happened here is when she died, she had quite the dowry, and her family went after Bernardo Roybal and said, we want our fair share. The kids from the first husband were involved. A lot of the Martinez women, because there was so much land involved with the Martinez family, there is a reason to marry into the Martinezes because they come with land and sheep, and people ask, these why would Roybal marry Martin? And I'm like, well, because he saw dollar signs. This is a family that's extremely wealthy. During her time period of her life, she is the wealthiest woman in New Mexico, actually, documented from her will. And so people, look at the dowries, look at the women, look at the number of children. And of course, she's famous for having a harp that her mother and grandmother passed down to her, and she leaves that harp to one of her daughters and granddaughters. So there are things about some of these families that just really stand out, and she's one of them that has been written about quite a bit because the harp. Who would have a harp in New Mexico in 1700 to 1743 and even before that? So again, look at the documents, and I like to look at, of course, at the women, and then linking the families, of course. This is out of my genealogy program. Years ago, when we didn't have these, we did family group sheets, and so you would fill this out with a husband, when he was born, who his parents are, when he married her, and then down here under other spouse, she married the notario Bernardo Roybal. And so the reason I have he died before 1731 is because she remarried September 1731. And that kind of makes his life very different in terms of a lifespan if I was going to be researching the Manuel Padilla line. Anyway, so she's, this gal, her dad is Sebastian Martin and her mom is Maria Lujan. Sebastian owns land from La Soledad, which is near San Juan Pueblo, all the way to Truchas. In fact, at some point, he even turns land back in because he just has so much land. And so again, his kids all came with dowries, with quite a bit of property associated with that. One of the things I also like to do, because we don't have photographs from this time period, are collect signatures. This is for Jeronimo Martin and Ignacio Martin. These guys are out of Abiquiu. And so I wish I had a Margarita signature. That would be really cool for my collection of Martinez materials. So again, just, identify who you're working on, what you know about them, put them in a family group sheet by hand or in a computer, and then you have a story to tell. You could write a really nice story just about her alone. This is my family. This is a wing of the family, my trunk line of Martinez's. I descend from Cristobal Martin, who first married Antonia Madrid. She's the daughter of Roque Madrid. She dies, and he marries Josefa Tenorio de Alba. And my ancestor comes from them. And so I have a lot of curiosity about him. He was a sergeant, which is why I think he married Antonia Madrid. Roque Madrid probably picked him out as a good candidate for a husband for his daughter. But one of their sons, Salvador Manuel, became a soldier. And because of the muster rolls, it says that he's rosy skinned, red hair and eyebrows, brown eyes, with a wide nose and 3 moles on the left side of his face. So was my ancestor a redhead? Possibly. And these are where the muster rolls really come in handy, because if the boys have red hair, the girls have to have red hair, right? So it's just always of interest to me what these people might have looked like. Now I have a lot of musters in the book I wrote, but also I've just collected them. Most of the Martin Serranos, Martinez's have black hair and black eyebrows and not red hair. And so again, even Luis Martin Serrano, the son of Hernan, talks about he's got dark black hair. And this is a common trait, it seems, for what Martinez's may or may not have looked like. Now, Josefa Tenorio de Alba is a big landowner in La Cienega, which is where Las Golondrinas is current day in New Mexico. When her family leaves property behind, there's a lot of land for the kids. And so my ancestor, Antonio, married a Montoya from La Cienega also. And so just kind of taking a look at this group of people, it's really interesting that not all of them became soldiers, which is a little bit unusual because usually that's what happens. They take the occupation of their father. And again, if you have a bunch of soldiers in your family, those people are actually easier to research than if they're just farmers. But they had to live in Santa Fe. And unfortunately, Cristobal was killed by a Comanche attack in 1776 at La Cienega outside of the church steps, basically. And so when his life comes to an end, it's quite an abrupt ending to him. And the family kind of splinters off a little bit at that point. So he's my La Cienega guy. Other Martin families, and there are many of them, maybe you don't even know how you connect or where you dead end. How do you track them? We're always looking for new information. But this could also be your brick wall that you need to find help with. There's other ways of researching. Again, the land records in the book I wrote, I broke them down by land in Chimayo, land in Abiquiu. Because if your family is, let's just say, part of the Cristobal Martin and Antonio Moraga land in Chimayo, there's a lot of records on that family. She names all of the people in her family, kids, her dad, her brother. So people don't really look at land records, but most of my really good connections for Martinez's come from land grants or land sales or some type of an inheritance that's land. And when I, hear people talk about Martinez's, I just tell them we're talking about a landed people. They loved land for some reason. Now they raised a lot of sheep. The early ones were weavers. And so again, they needed all of that land to make a living for these families that had 13 and 14 kids. And I would just suggest that don't ignore the wives, because the wives also, like Antonio Moraga, she can tell you a whole bunch of stuff about Cristobal Martin that you would otherwise not know if you just never researched her. So, go take a look at some of the wives for these people. They can tell you a whole story unto itself. Last wills and testaments for people in the family groups. There's not as many wills for Martinez's as people would think, even though there's a lot of them. But I included stuff like his marriage to Tomasa Martin Gonzalez. And it says here in the will for 20 years, more or less. And they had one child, Tomas Antonio Sena. Now, I'm also related to this family, and I descend from Tomas, their one son. And so there's, again, a lot of information that comes from these wills. Bernardino Sena then secondly married Manuela Roybal. She's the daughter of Ignacio Roybal and Francisca Robledo. And those Roybals have all those connections to the Martinezes. So again, she came with a whole bunch of stuff, to the marriage. They never had any kids, but they adopted a bunch of people. And so a lot of people think they connect to him, but they connect through these adopted people in the family. And so make sure you read the wills and see who's included and who's not included. The military enlistment documents, I know people have asked me about Tomas Padilla. Why did I include him on there? Well, his mom was Margarita Martin, who we previously talked about, and his father was Juan Padilla. And in this case, he's got the black hair and eyebrows, heavy beard, rosy colored skin. Most of the soldiers in their day were 5 feet 2 inches tall. That was kind of the average height. So I'm taller than that, so I would be tall if I was in the military back then. Manuel Martin, the son of Lugardo Martin and Maria Pacheco. Again, he's 5'1", and he's got this black hair and black eyebrows. So these people have some distinct coloring to them. These guys are not close cousins at all. So, there's nothing to really compare there, but look at the military musters if you want to get an idea. And if you're artistic, you might be able to even draw what these guys may look like in your mind in terms of a Martin, template for people. So DNA, let's take a look at that. The current DNA for Martinez's is RM269. It's Western European. Pretty good sampling. We have probably over 200 people that have tested with the surname Martinez and the validations for the genealogies. So if you're at Martinez and you test your DNA and you come back a G or an I would just tell you don't match the trunk line. We're fairly confident that this is the right coding for them. Again, our guy is only back to Zacatecas, but even though he has a European haplotype, we know there's a long ways from him to the Western European guy to make that connection. So what do you do if you're a Martinez or you have a brick wall and your DNA is not matching? I would go back and redo the genealogy. If you can use primary sources, please use those first. In methodology of genealogy, we like to look at birth, marriage, death. If you can do 2 records, birth, marriage, marriage, death, to form a really good case that you have the right person. I always say if there's a baptism missing, it could be an informal adoption. People really didn't adopt in the colonial period or even up till probably 1900. So there's these adoptions where kids may have gone to live with close family members and taken the name over time. So you have to kind of look at that. Obviously an illegitimate child, or what I call a non-paternal event. And then the criado, criada Indian people that are part of the household that take the name and eventually become very Hispanicized and don't really say that in the record. So, go back and look, but you may have a brick wall. And at some point you just have to be satisfied with that and then just walk away and go work on another family, because you're probably not going to get very far at that point. So if you're trying to look, I mean, I could probably write stories on the Martinez family about all the people that don't connect, more so than the people that do connect. And so if you're going to utilize DNA, use some thought process, talk to people that have done that before, because it can get a little confusing, and especially trying to explain to somebody why their DNA doesn't match everybody else's DNA. So for my case, in terms of continually working on the Martinez's, is to get more DNA testing done. I'd like to find more ways to publish data, get help or get other ideas from people. I think just a long list of names and who people are is a little boring. I do still want to do more genealogy from the female standpoint. I'd like to do some stories or figure out the women part of this instead of just the guy. But I do need to break it down by family names or numbers, because even with the females, there's like a lot of Manuelas and Josefas, and so it makes it confusing. I am not the Martinez expert. I do a lot of Martinez genealogy, but I will tell anybody I am not the expert. That is not the only family that I work on. A lot of people contact me because they can't connect their families to the Martinez's, period. Or they're just starting their genealogy, and you'll have that question, can you send me everything you have on the Martinez's? And you can't, there's just no way to do that. I mean, it's just impossible. And so, do I want to be spending a lot of time answering those kinds of questions? I guess I do, because I still answer them and still deal with people that are doing that. But I will just put it out there. I don't feel like I'm the Martinez expert. And there are people that do have spent lots of time on the Martinez's. Publications, of course, I have to tell you, when I started putting all this information together, I thought it would be really good to compile a list of all the articles on Martinez's, and there are so many of them. It would take probably 10 pages of material to just to publish every article that's ever been done on the Martinez's. So it's been very well written on. There's stuff on websites, emailing of information. People send me stuff. Did you see this on the website or on Facebook? And there's other ways you can, present material. But again, people are always asking, are you going to ever publish on this, this one branch of the family? And I, most of the time, have no intent of doing that unless I find something really cool about them to really do that. So the pitfalls of just only working on one family is it never ends. You will not connect everybody. If that is your goal, you just have to tell yourself right up front, it's just not going to happen. There will be people in your family, or outlaws in the family, or friends and people you don't even know, that will not be happy because you haven't done something with their family. And then if you start having problems, you need to look at your system isn't working or it's breaking down. Mine broke down a long time ago. I been doing this for a long time. I did a lot of genealogy on paper when I started putting stuff into my database. And I've used them all: family tree, roots, legacy, family. I didn't put everybody in. And so finally had to take the time to go in, check all that, check the sources, and make sure I had them connected. And, you might get burned out just working on one family, which is what happened kind of with me on the Martinez's. Been doing this for a long time. And so I put them away for about 10 years, and then I came back to them. I've even started over again, researching some of the families, because I just felt like I was missing something, like I didn't have enough source material to really connect them all. And that kind of just stopped me dead in my tracks. And I went and worked on another family, my Sanchez's, which happened to do the same thing to me. So I may have a pattern there. Anyway, think about what you're going to do with all this material, how you're going to present it maybe to your family. In my case, I give my kids every year for Christmas a letter that tells them something I've been doing for the year, research, a will, something, a land record, and did you know, and blah, blah, blah. I have two kids. One hardly ever says anything, and the other one's like, wow, that's great, Mom. So, I don't even have a happy audience with my immediate family. And so again, we do this because we love it, and we do it, to keep us going, or to find those nuggets that might be publishable or that we can pass on to other people. And so again, I'm not the Martinez name guru, but I do like sharing my ideas and some of the systems I've used. And yes, I've written articles. I'm not the best writer, and I don't really enjoy it. I enjoy the research part of it. And I just encourage all of you, again, I in the book, there's pages and pages of articles on the Martinez family. I'm not even sure that it does me any good to really talk about, any one specific article. I will point out that Jose Antonio Escobar did a nice compendium article on the Martin Serranos, which I tell people is kind of the current scholar work on that, with where they've, where we've ended up. He asked me to write a little forward for that, and I did. And I, in summary of just this is, they've been around for a long time, 1598 to today, 2021. And for a long, long time, 250 years, the Martin Serrano family, they just kind of managed to survive. I mean, they're not in the headlines. They're in the back lines. They give testimony, but then they kind of disappear from the record. They just kind of have learned to manage the political system, the church system. And in the process, they gained a lot of land. They had big families. And of course, the name today is one of the largest names in New Mexico that anybody can research. And with that, I'd just like to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to share this information. And if you have questions, I guess we can go to that, Kathy.
Yes, you can put your question in the chat, but if I don't see anything for the next minute, I imagine some people like to express themselves better vocally, so you can unmute yourself.
I see some questions. So
go ahead.
So Linda says she's also related to Tomasa of the Martin Serrano line and grandmother, long story, blah, blah, blah. And so because even though Bernardino Sena only had one son, Tomas had a bunch of kids, a bunch. So he made up for what his dad didn't have. Kind of interesting in that respect. And I do too descend from them. Priscilla says, is there a website where we can find last wills and testaments, and how do we look for this type of data? Priscilla, in 2013, I had back surgery, and I knew I was going to be down for a year. So one of the things I did is I spent a lot of time blog posting on a blog all of the wills I had in my possession at the time. And it's just, if you Google 1598nm.blogspot, there's more than wills on there, but there's about 400 wills. There's other ways to get to them. The Spanish Archives of New Mexico, there's a lot of wills in the land grant documents. And so there are some, and then there's a lot that we don't have. So that's one way to start looking for them. The Spanish Archives of New Mexico index that Twitch will put out, you can actually see if there's a surname for your ancestor. Somebody thanking me, you're welcome. Deborah, have you considered writing fiction based on this information? Oh, absolutely. Yes, that would be great. And then I can add, and I found some really great stuff on the internet that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but let's just throw those in too. Yeah, that would be great.
Drama going on.
Yeah, little drama. Yeah. Arian Paul. So what was your most recent exciting discovery in your research on any line? Whew. Well, right now, I started working on these lobatos, and they're driving me nuts because the DNA doesn't match. There's not enough paper trail. But I'm finding a lot of really interesting stuff just in Santa Fe, because I always thought, lobatos were more up north, and how they may or may not be connected. But anyway, it just, it's these little nuggets that to tell you, oh, we're brothers, oh, we're not brothers. And then I go down those rabbit holes, and then I come back out and I'm going, what was I working on? And so I'm like, I think everybody else, right? I call it the roadrunner syndrome, I'm over here. But I haven't done a lot of real serious research in a while. I do parts and pieces. I've loved doing and working with Daria Landress on the mitochondrial DNA article materials that she's published. Those are the kinds of things I like to look at. I'm currently looking at all of the diligencias that are in Roots Limited that Brian Halico Chavez. Roots Limited is like an index card, and there's actually all of those little indexes that he writes up about those people. There's usually about 4 or 5 pages of a diligencia in an, that you can go and look at. And I really like to read those. So those have some good stuff. I guess I didn't really answer your question, but it's interesting. Let's see. Kathy says to everyone, can I share a drawing of Hernan Martin Serrano, please? I don't know. That's up to Kathy. Oh, there you go. Wow, that is fabulous. That's great. I love that. Yeah,
you can unmute Kathy if you want to.
If she showed a picture, we can't see it.
It's on
see it now.
It's on Kathy's screen.
Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, I can go to this. I do. Start saying something, Kathy, so I can see.
All right. This is Hernan Martin Serrano and his wife, Juana Rodriguez. Although there's a controversy, is it Doña Inez? And then this is Asensio Archuleta and his wife, Ana Perez de
Bustillo.
And now this drawing is by Roberto Valdez.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. And that's kind of what I picture them looking like. I mean, they're very Spanish colonial, not very
that's
tall.
Their whole garb.
Yeah, I think that's very, depicting of them at the time. Let's see where else I got. There's a map that this picture comes from with lots of information, probably if Roberto did it.
It's accompanied with the big old map.
Yeah, so Jens Martinez, my great-grandfather was Valentin Martinez from Cucharas, is my brick wall, son of Dolores Martinez, Juan Julian. Okay, so Abiquiu to Colorado is interesting. So the first wave of migration from people to Colorado came out of El Rito, New Mexico. Okay, not Abiquiu, even though it's close. And so that first wave is from El Rito. So I would look in those records first, and then I would backstep and go look in Abiquiu.
Okay.
And then the next step, you say they're in Cucharas. Okay, so that's over on this side, right? Then you're in trouble, man. You got to go look at.
Right. Yeah, because it seemed like there was Maria Dolores Martinez had made the move, I think with Vallejos
Mhm.
to Walsenburg, Cucharas area.
Yeah, so you could be Mora. I would look in Mora.
Okay.
I would look in Trinidad. I would look in Las Vegas.
Well, it's kind of weird because he was an illegitimate son. So there was no birth record for him, and there's no records in the census, which is weird.
Well, I could probably help you if, we emailed offline, but there's a big migration from the Las Vegas, Mora area that goes up to Trinidad and then over to the Cucharas area. Now,
Okay.
that's not the only way. The other way is through Taos. Okay, so the people from Taos stopped in San Luis. Okay, and then they didn't like it, maybe because it was so darn cold, they decided to go up to Walsenburg. And then the El Rito bunch that went straight up, those are the ones that kind of stayed in the Conejos area. They didn't move around too much, but it's an interesting thing from Cucharas or Walsenburg over to like Alamosa area that there's a lot of going back and forth. And then just that whole Las Vegas corridor of people that went up north. And even later in the 1900s, people went to work on the railroad in Wyoming, sheep herders, beet farmers, all migrated up and down. So you didn't put a date here, so I'm not really sure, but I would say Julian's
Yeah,
a common name.
He was born in 1871 in Walsenburg, Cucharas.
Yeah, I would look, because there's Martinez's from everywhere. There's a bunch of them in Mora, New Mexico, bunches. And they come from Abiquiu. The Mora Martinez's, a lot of them are from the Abiquiu area.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Did I say Martin Sandhills were not Martin Serranos? That's what I'm saying, Lenny. The DNA doesn't match. Even though we have some records that look like they might be Martin Serrano, we've got some DNA discrepancies with those people, and a lot of them come out of Chimayo. And I'm going to go back to my grandma, Antonia Moraga, who I'm going to blame for that problem. She either adopted somebody or something happened there, but DNA wise, it's not connecting. And I think that's it, Kathy.
I think so too.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, Henrietta, and everyone who attended. This session has been recorded and will be available later on the private YouTube. So thank you for attending.
Thank you all. But good luck with your research.
Thank
We'll
you,
see ya.
Henrietta.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.